What's going on, guys? Welcome back to my YouTube channel. I'm Ethan Horror, and today we are going to be getting into one of the most heated debates in all of horror, deciding whether or not these famous movies are horror movies or not. Now, I'm going to be doing this tier list style, but it's not going to be the traditional tier list, like, the 5 tiers you go through and you rank them. There's going to be 2 tiers, horror and not horror, and I have 36 movies here that I think are pretty divisive. I looked on Reddit for this, I looked on Google, movies that people consider not horror and horror that, it's pretty divisive. So, it's pretty simple, just me going through each of them, and if my voice sounds weird or I start slurring my words, that is because I just had my mouth numbed for fillings. So I'm trying to film through it, but if it sounds a little weird, that's why. Oh, by the way, this is episode 11 of my Halloween Spooktacular. If you, I don't think I said it. Alright, so here we are at the tier list. As I said, 36 movies to go through. Here's all the movies we're going to be talking about. And let's kick it off with Predator. So Predator, people don't tend to think of Predator as a horror movie because it is a lot more action-y. It obviously has Arnold Schwarzenegger, one of the biggest action stars of all time, in it. Some people tend to think this is more of a sci-fi action movie. But Predator, for sure, is going to go into at least horror adjacent. Now, here's the thing. Movies can be multiple genres, like there's such thing as a rom-com, a romantic comedy, or a drama comedy, a dramedy. But there's also horror comedies, there's horror action movies, like it can be multiple genres, so saying that I think Predator is a horror movie doesn't mean I don't think it is also an action movie. Next up, we have Silence of the Lambs, and this is one of the most diverse ones. People, I think, don't tend to think of this as a horror movie because it got so much Oscar love. It won 5 Oscars, so it obviously got a lot of love from the Academy, but I think it's horror. I think it's for sure horror, and the thing is, I think because it's focused more on the scariness of the situation, focused more on the horror rather than the procedural elements with the cops. I think it's still focused on the cops and on, why am I blanking on her name right now? I can only think of the actors. Clarice Starling. It is focused on her, but I think it's also focused on the villain and on the horrific side of things, where something like Seven, I think, is more focused on the cops, so I'd say that's more of a thriller drama, which actually, let's talk about that right now. I'm going to put Seven in not horror. I think Silence of the Lambs is horror, Seven is not. That's just my own thought process here. Seven's more focused on the cops and the procedural mystery, and Silence of the Lambs is a lot more focused on the scariness, the villains, so I would consider Silence of the Lambs horror and Seven not horror. Now we have The Terminator, and this is possibly the most divisive one, and people who think Terminator is a horror movie are like, oh, okay, if you don't think so, that's fine. People who think Terminator is not a horror movie are assholes about it. So if you don't think Terminator is a horror movie, that's fine. But it definitely is. It's definitely a horror movie. The first one is at the bare minimum horror adjacent. And that is because this is a slasher movie. It has the same formula as a slasher movie. Besides, they introduce time travel and it's a Terminator. Like that, so it's a sci-fi horror action movie. And I do agree him using a gun does make you think it's action. But let's just take that out of things for a second. If he was using a knife or a machete, would you argue with me? Next up, we have Jaws. And this is another extremely divisive one, which I think another reason why people don't consider Jaws a horror movie is because it broke through into the broader pop culture. But Jaws is for sure horror. I mean, when you think of Jaws, you think of people not wanting to go in the water, people scared to go to the beach. So this is for sure a scary movie, and I think if it's scary, that doesn't mean necessarily that it is guaranteed to be a horror movie, but it certainly is a factor, and I think Jaws is for sure horror. Now we have Upgrade, and I know Upgrade was covered on the Dead Meat, show on the Kill Count. So I think it is, at the very least, horror adjacent. I think there are some scary elements. It's very existential. It's the numbing. I swear I can say that word. Very scary. But I'm going to say Upgrade is not horror. I'm going to say that one's more of a sci-fi action movie rather than the horror elements. I think there are definitely horror elements to it, but I would say it leans more into the other two. So that one's going to go into not horror. As is Jurassic Park. That one's not horror. Now, the difference between Jaws and Jurassic Park is Jaws is trying to scare you. Jurassic Park, while having some scary scenes, is more of an adventure sci-fi movie. Like, it is more about the awe of the dinosaurs while also being in some very scary situations. So I think Jurassic Park also kind of borders, but I'm gonna go not. Now we have Joker. Joker's not horror. I'm sorry. This is a very disturbing and effed up movie, but not horror, okay? I love Joker as much as the next guy. That's one of my favorite DC movies of all time. And it has one of the most messed up moments I've ever watched. Like, that ending scene, I think, is genuinely disturbing.
Get what you fucking deserve!
But it's not horror. Now we have Coraline, and I'm willing to allow Coraline into the horror, okay? It's a kid's horror movie, but I just rewatched it last night, and it actually has some decently scary moments, even for non-children. But I think, yeah, definitely a kid's horror movie, but I'm gonna go horror nonetheless. Annihilation. Now, I do have Annihilation on my horror movie shelf. So, obviously, I think it is at least horror adjacent. Would I consider it a full horror movie? No, it's not fully horror, but I am going to stick it into the horror section. I think it has enough scary elements to it. The bear is a very horror villain, so I'm going to say that Annihilation is horror. Now we have Donnie Darko, and I was very shocked that people don't consider Donnie Darko a horror movie. I definitely think it is. Like I said with Annihilation, Donnie Darko's also on my horror movie shelf, so I really do think Donnie Darko is one without a question. I mean, it is scary. Sure, it does kind of lean into the thriller and a little bit into sci-fi, but I'm going to say I think horror is at least one of the primary genres of that one. Now we have World War Z, and I think the reason a lot of people don't consider this one horror is because it has such A-list celebrities in it, such as Brad Pitt, and it is more action. And I would admit it is a little bit more action, but I am going to say it's at least horror adjacent. At least horror adjacent. I think anything with zombies is going to at least give me a little bit of bias towards it because, you know, zombies are such a horror genre or horror monsters. So I'm going to say it's at least somewhat horror. Now we have The Meg, and I'm going to say The Meg, I'm going to put The Meg in not horror, okay? I think Jaws is 100% horror, but I don't think The Meg is going to be horror. Because this one isn't focused on scaring you or focused on like, oh, look at how horrific this shark killing people is. This one's focused on, look at how cool this shark eating people is. And look at Jason Statham is fighting him on a freaking jet ski or whatever he's fighting him on in the end. Maximum Overdrive. Now this one, there's a couple on here where it's like people have told me specifically, oh, I don't think that's a horror movie. And Maximum Overdrive is one of those. People have told me, I don't think that's a horror movie. I would disagree. I'm going to say Maximum Overdrive is horror. Now we have Tremors, and I can see why some people don't think Tremors is a horror movie. It's a lot more adventure-y. I'm still going to stick it in horror, I think, for sure. I mean, like I said, I understand why you would think that, but I don't. It's horror. Now we have Misery, and you're probably looking at me like, who the hell doesn't think Misery is a horror movie?
My dad.
I legitimately had an argument with him. I said, oh, because we were talking about how, you know, horror movies don't win Oscars. And I was like, well, you know, Kathy Bates won for Misery. And he was like, oh, well, that's not a horror. I beg your pardon? Yeah, Misery is horror. Misery is 100% horror. Now we have The Crow. And I think The Crow, I would not say horror is its primary genre. But I would say it's at least still horror. I would say action is definitely the primary genre here, okay? It is 100% action first and foremost. But I think horror is at least an element in this one, so I'm going to count it in the horror section, but I would say definitely action first and foremost, but I would also count it as a horror movie. Now we have Mortal Kombat, the movie, also covered on Dead Meat, but also I'm going to put it in not horror. I think the movies are 100% action. The games are at the very least horror adjacent. I'll give you that. The games are horror adjacent, but I would not say the movies are. They're very action. They're gory as hell, but I mean, so is Kill Bill, and we're not going to argue that one's horror. Now we have From Dusk Till Dawn. How do people not consider this a horror movie? To me, it's pretty obviously a horror, but some people flat out just see it as an action movie, which, fair, it is very action, but that's like telling me Sinners isn't a horror movie. Sinners is a horror movie. Now we have The Craft, and I think this one's considered not a horror movie because it's like, it's not very scary. It's more fun, more, just focused on the witchcraft. But I think by the third act, it definitely goes horror, so I'm going to say this one's horror. Not a scary horror movie by any means, but I would definitely put it in the horror category. Now we have The Mummy 1999. This is the more action-centric one, so I'd say it's primarily an adventure movie, then probably action, then I'd say it's probably horror. So, again, covered on Dead Meat, and a remake of a horror movie. And like I said with The Crow, I think, its primary genre isn't horror, but I'm going to at least count it. Now we have Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness, and this one was supposed to be a horror movie, but ended up not being one. I'm going to put it in not horror. I think there is actually a very, very good horror sequence when Doctor Strange rises from the dead as the zombie, and when Wanda kills the entire Illuminati. So, one of my favorite Marvel movies, but not a horror movie. Now we have Oldboy, and yep, this one's also not a horror movie. Sorry, the ending is super disturbing, but this movie's not horror. Now we have Godzilla 2014. Another one this was another tough one because I would say it's the most horror of the, modern Godzilla movies. Besides maybe Godzilla Minus One. I might consider that one horror. I didn't put that one on the list for some reason, but I probably would. But I'm still going to go majority action for this one. No. Yeah, I'll count this one as horror. But we'll talk about another Godzilla movie coming up here. But I'll count that one as horror. Kong Skull Island, not even a little bit. Not even slightly horror, okay? I get it, some of the original King Kong movies can be considered horror. Kong Skull Island is action full on, so no. No Country for Old Men, again, disturbing. Not horror. Now we have the Belko Experiment, and I think a lot of people consider this one action, which is fair. I think it is maybe mainly action, but it is also very scary, so I'm going to say this one's horror. Next we have One Cut of the Dead, and this is one that a lot of people consider horror movies. I'd say probably the vast majority of people consider a horror movie. I am one of the few people that was like, yeah, this is a comedy. It's a horror comedy, but I'd say it's kind of like Scary Movie, where it's a comedy based on horror. And I don't know if I'd say Scary Movie is a horror movie, but I'm going to still put it... See, it's tough, because it's a comedy based on, would you say Young Frankenstein is a horror movie? I don't think I would, so I'm going to say this one's not horror. Now we have Cam, and Cam this one really pisses me off, because, people are like, oh, there's no villain, it can't be horror. Just because it's not a slasher movie, you idiot, doesn't mean it's not horror. Cam is a horror movie. It is scary. It has no villain, or, no physical villain, but it is terrifying. It is scary. So I would consider Cam for sure to be horror. Next up, we have The Lighthouse, and this was the only one on the entire list that stumped me. I don't know what the hell The Lighthouse is. Is it thriller? Is it horror? Is it a period piece? I mean, definitely a period piece, but, what do we count for the genre here? I don't know. I don't know what genre you'd classify this movie as. It makes you uncomfortable, sure, but I don't... And it really just came down to Robert Eggers. I'd consider him a horror director. He considers this one horror. It was also covered by Dead Meat. I'm gonna say it's horror. I'm gonna say it's horror. I don't, like I said, I don't know, but I'm gonna consider it horror. Now we have Godzilla, King of the Monsters, not horror. Not even slightly. Now we have The Hunt, and this is again more of an action-y movie. Definitely some horror elements in here, but I would say this one is primarily action, so I'm gonna stick this one into not horror. Like I said, you can consider this horror. I even have it on my horror movie shelf. But I would say first and foremost, action. I think there's just less horror elements than there is in like The Mummy or The Crow, so I can't consider this one horror. But there are definitely elements in there. Pearl. You're probably like me and looking at me like, what? How the hell is Pearl not a horror movie? And I've heard some arguments. Some of them are pretty good. And I'm like, oh, I can see how you don't think it's a horror movie. I think it's definitely a horror movie, but I have seen some valid arguments on people saying that it is not. Next up, we have Cocaine Bear. Cocaine Bear is not horror. It's another one of those, like, Godzilla, Rampage, like, giant animal movies that I just don't think are horror. This one, I'd say, might even lean comedy a bit. But I'd say it actually is probably full comedy. But it is gory. It does have a good villain, like the Cocaine Bear himself. But I wouldn't say that one's horror. Next up, we have I Saw the TV Glow. And I Saw the TV Glow not only is... I consider it a horror movie, so let's just put it up there right now. I think it's horror. This was one of the ones that almost stumped me because I don't know what the hell is happening in this movie. And much like The Lighthouse, I don't know what genre to consider it. But this is also one of the biggest turnarounds I've ever had on a movie. When I first watched it, I was like, I'm confused and unnerved, but I don't know what the hell I just watched. And then I read into it on what all the things meant, and I was like, holy shit. I'm an idiot. This is a genius movie. So I Saw the TV Glow now. When I first reviewed it, I did not give it too high of a rating. I think I gave it 2 stars. But it is now up to like 4.5. So I really do like it now. And last but not least, we have Ghostbusters. And this one I put on the list because I think it is possible to make a ghost Halloween-themed movie and have it not be horror. I don't think Ghostbusters is horror. It's not scary. It's more comedy than anything, I think. Maybe a little bit more sci-fi. I wouldn't say it's horror because I don't think it's scary. I don't think it is really anything to do with horror. It's like, would you consider Casper horror? No. Would you consider Beetlejuice horror? Actually, I might consider Beetlejuice horror. But, like, Casper the Friendly Ghost, you wouldn't consider that horror. So, I don't think Ghostbusters is horror, but that, my friends, is my completed horror or not tier list. Like I said, 2 tiers, so we got a pretty good amount in horror, but I kept it pretty even, had a decent amount in not horror as well. I'm obviously a horror fan, so I'm a bit more biased towards it, where I'm like, oh, if I really like that movie, maybe I consider it horror. But like I said, this is not trying to be objective. This is strictly just my opinion. Like, if you disagree with me on any of these, that's fine. It doesn't matter what genre we think a movie is. This is just me telling you what I think the genres of these movies are. So comment down below where you agree or disagree, respectfully, of course. And let's head to an outro. And that is going to be it for today's video. Remember, if you did enjoy, make sure to hit like and subscribe so I know you want to see more videos like it in the future. Make sure to hit the bell notification to be notified when I post any brand new videos and the rest of my Halloween Spooktacular. We got 2 videos left, 1 more in between, and then my big 31 movie ranking. So we'll see you then. Until next time, I'm Ethan Horror. This has been Ethan Horror. See you then.